All right, so now we're at the appraisal process, okay? And then if the appraisal comes in, 99% of the time it matches the sale price.
It used to. It used to.
It used to?
No, actually, in purchases, it's pretty close these days.
It's pretty close, okay.
Refinances change, the dynamic changes. Everyone thinks their home's worth more than it may be, but a sales process is a pretty accurate process generally. So let's assume that they make value. The appraisal matches or comes in higher, ideally, than the sales price. That would be 90% of the time these days, probably.
Because I know in order to get it fully committed, approved, you need to have the appraisal done.
Yes.
And then all that documentation that the lender has asked for has to be supplied, and you send it to the underwriting department.
Right.
They shoot forth an approval, which is a happy day.
Yes, absolutely.
For people. And then from there, we haven't talked about closing costs. So from the approval, now we set a date for closing.
Right.
Now what kind of, if you could give us a list of some closing costs, and I know the costs may vary, but just give us an example of those.
The costs vary a little bit. A new regulation was actually put into place 3 weeks ago now that requires that they're disclosed up front and guaranteed. They can't change within very, very tight tolerances, and some of them can't change at all. And they have to be guaranteed for at least 10 days. There's a lot of legislation that just went into place January 1st.
Okay.
Closing costs, unfortunately, with the way everything's been regulated so much in the past even 9 months, have changed a little bit. The appraisal process has gotten more expensive, candidly, because it now has another level of control to keep it unbiased, is the intention anyway. Closing costs for most any home range on the low side probably at $2,800. And depending on the type of home and the loan amount, things of that nature, maybe up to $3,500 to $4,000. And those are, the appraisal fee and the attorney's fees, underwriting fees, processing fees, municipal lien certificates. There's a lot of things that go into it. There are probably a dozen or 15 different components. We have to go to the registry of deeds in the town that the property is, and register the transfer of ownership. So Angel owned it today, and she sold it to Bob. And we need to record that to make sure that it's legally binding and there in history, so that anyone goes back and can search for it.
And the seller has to make sure all the taxes are paid and all that
Absolutely,
stuff.
And that's actually part of the bank's obligation, is to make certain that there are no outstanding liens against the home, so that when a buyer takes ownership, they don't buy a bunch of debt that they didn't realize they were getting. Mechanics liens and water liens and tax liens and any other bills associated to that property. Those all have to be cleared, and that's part of the closing cost process that is built into the cost.
Okay. And they know in advance how much these closing costs may be?
Yeah.
Do they have to have that in the bank? Or I know sometimes I've written offers where it can be rolled into their mortgage?
It can be rolled in the sense that you can ask the sellers to pay it. So it can't be rolled in other than making perhaps a higher than you might otherwise offer. If you thought the house was worth $150,000, you could offer $155,000 with a seller to pay $5,000 in closing costs. That's a great thing. It's totally legitimate. It's legal. It's appropriate, as long as the property will appraise at that higher number.
Not the 150.
It has to appraise at the higher number.
Okay.
As long as that happens, there's no reason not to do that. It allows the buyers to keep a little bit more cash in their pockets, because they don't have to pay. They can basically finance 90 or 95% of the closing costs as well.
Right.
So the purchase price of the house plus the closing costs get financed. It's a very small impact on their mortgage payment monthly, but has a big impact in their cash flow and the cash left in their bank to buy all the things that we know go along with buying a new home. The garbage cans and the hose to water the plants.
Right, exactly.
All the stuff that you don't account for until you're there.
I know it. One other question is regarding points.
Yes.
If someone wants to, I know say the average we talked about is about 5% right now.
Yep.
For an interest rate, if someone wants to lower that,
yes.
Explain to us what a point is.
Sure. A point is equal to 1% of the loan amount.
Yeah.
Okay, and it serves to reduce your interest rate. So it is a prepaid charge. You pay it at closing. Generally, it's incorporated in your closing costs, and it would, on average, a point paid would lower your interest rate by about 1/4%. When you do the math, it takes between 4 and 6 years to break even. So if you were going to be in a home for just 2 years, it would not be a good idea to pay points. unless for some reason. Sometimes for qualification purposes, someone has to have a certain rate to qualify.
Oh.
And so we can pay points to get them that rate to help them qualify. But by and large, it's about a 5 to 6 year return.
So it's for someone who wants to stay in their home long term.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And things that we're at the bottom of the market in terms of the interest rate market. Now we are actually very near 40-year lows. So it's a great time if you're going to be in your home for a long time to get a fixed rate mortgage,
Right.
and even consider paying points if you expect to be there for a while.
Right. And even for refinancing purposes too.
Absolutely.
Right now, I know the average was around 6 or 7 several years ago, but now if it's at 5 or below,
Absolutely.
that's an option for people.
Absolutely. Of course.
Well, once they go to closing, they sign those papers and they get those keys, and they're very happy people.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But thank you for explaining that process.
Sure. Happy to.
If anyone has any questions, they can email me at angel@angelsrealty.net or bob@zenithadvisors.com. And